Another, another theme in wealth, poverty, and politics, which is a theme in the wider world, Black lives. Quoting Wealth, Poverty, and Politics, quote, "Those who have promoted the prevailing social vision in which lags, gaps, or disparities to the detriment of Black people are the
Welcome to Pegasus versus the World, where we take on challenges, comedy, trending topics, and some travel. City boy! City boy! All right, man, I wanted to check this out. So, we're in an interesting time. They released the JFK files. And people are going through it. I think it's 80,000 documents or 60,000, something like that. And it's interesting because my whole synopsis of the whole thing is like, okay, cool. They're trying to buddy up with the American people and gain some trust again, because the trust in the government systems and central intelligence agencies in America are at all-time low. But the reality is, like, really, to me, it's really what was left out of it, right? If they gave you 80,000 documents or 60,000, it's that one document they left out, you know, that is like the nail in the coffin type joint. Now, I don't expect them to have something that's like name, date, address, this person's blood type, this is who did it, and this is how this, that, and the other happened. But I do think things that would implicate other factions other than just the CIA, I think are probably missing at some capacity. And, you know, the more you go down rabbit holes, which I'm not trying to get too conspiracy-esque on this channel, that's something I would potentially do on like a Rumble, but over here it's just not, it's not worth it. And I bring up the JFK files because of what I'm about to react to. I'm about to react to Thomas Sowell, and it looks like he's having a conversation about Lyndon Johnson, which is Lyndon B. LBJ, right? Lyndon B. Johnson was the president right after JFK, and there had been rumors that he wanted to get JFK to F out of there. But those implications, I haven't heard them pop up in the new files yet, right? They just dropped as I'm recording this, so we'll see. And I'm not personally reading them; I'm just kind of following the updates. So I just thought it'd be interesting. I thought this was the perfect time to watch something by Thomas Sowell about Lyndon Johnson, because I've heard a lot about him and his huge expansion of the welfare state, which I think it's good in a country like America with the predominant wealth we have to have social programs to help people, you know, get past the line and keep going. I've seen that work. Like, I have a really good friend. His mother was on like welfare and food stamps for a short amount of time, but it helped her get through schooling, and then she became a nurse and then became independent of the government and started doing her own thing. I think stuff like that's cool. I'm cool with that, you know, but there's these, a lot of things get misused, and they also seem to incentivize bad behaviors, like more so like, let's say you were looking at welfare, you know, they incentivize the man not being in the house for the single mother to get, you know, more things. Let's just keep it super simple. And I think that does an injustice to the kids and the family and trying to keep families together, right? So I don't have all the answers, but I do know Lyndon B. Johnson really expanded the welfare state. I think Social Security and stuff like that was introduced by Roosevelt, and people consider that a part of the welfare state, which is, I didn't know that. I don't consider Social Security, Medicaid, you know, Medicare, things people actually need. I didn't technically consider that a part of the welfare state, but I guess it is. But Lyndon Johnson really expanded it with the food stamps, cash assistance, stuff like that. So, you know, that goes to say the JFK files just dropped. I personally, you know, who knows, you know, but it would seem like a government has things to protect, right? So the implications and things they release are going to steer you in a certain direction that's going to benefit them over the long term, right? If they're playing a game of chess or strategically trying to make certain things happen, you think of all the central intelligence agencies America has versus other countries. What is it, MI6? You know, there's just a lot of different things going on in the world today. So anyways, that brings me here. Thomas Sowell talking about Lyndon B. Johnson. If you want to like, share, comment, subscribe. If you didn't know, I'm Black Pegasus. Links to my other channels are in the description, and let's see what's popping.
Another theme in wealth, poverty, and politics, which is a theme in the wider world, Black lives. Quoting Wealth, Poverty, and Politics, quote, "Those who have promoted the prevailing social vision in which lags, gaps, or disparities to the detriment of black people are the fault of white people are trapped in the corollary that these lags, gaps, or disparities should disappear once those other people are constrained by civil rights and policies, civil rights laws and policies. But nothing of the sort has happened. White people bind themselves to behave better by passing civil rights laws, and black lives should improve. But nothing of the sort has happened," you argue.
In material terms, there has been some improvement, but that improvement began long before the civil rights laws were passed. From 1940 to 1960. 1940, 87% of black families in the United States were in poverty.
87%.
87. 1960, it's 47. So there's a decline of 40 percentage points in that 20-year period.
A little less than half, but damn near half.
In a generation and a half.
Yeah,
say,
and this is before the welfare state comes in under Lyndon Johnson in the form of the war on poverty, the civil rights laws, and so forth.
So it's interesting because I've read about this a little bit, and it's been on my subconscious and driving my curiosity to another level, because you heard him break down the wealth disparage. Like 87% of black Americans in America were in poverty, and literally, they went to 40% by 1960. But then I forget when all the civil rights stuff started getting implicated. It's closer to like 65-ish, I think. But you saw this breakup. Like, you saw all these things change. Like, I read that in the 60s, black folks were doing really good. And this is what was interesting, because this is before integration. And then during segregation, black folks had black communities and just started building them up like the communities they saw around them, right? The other races they saw around them. So there were black businesses, black banks. The key thing is, like, that's kind of wild when you think there's black banks, because the banking system, when you get into that, that's a whole nother deep dive. But the fact that they had black banks, black businesses in America, that just makes sense. But black banks is crazy. Anyways, they had these communities where the dollar stayed within the black community. They were able to build that economic system. And from what I read, it was doing pretty good. But there were some things that happened. I know the Black Wall Street that was horrendous. Them burning down Black Wall Street, that was just horrendous. And that kind of comes with the territory of America being in that dark period. However, when I read when they passed a lot of the civil rights stuff and the welfare state to actually uplift impoverished communities, like, it didn't seem like even till now the course correction has not happened within the black community. And some people would argue that it was better for black folks in America in certain instances in the 60s. And some people argue that eventually we were going to integrate naturally, or like a natural process just from working together, entertain. It would just naturally, but America kind of forced it. Some people argue that's good or bad. I'm just watching all of these conversations because I was taught a certain thing, right? Segregation bad, integration good, civil rights good, welfare state, good for the overall, populace. That's just what I was taught. So that's where I would always lean. And now I'm just kind of re-examining it as I get a little bit older and just wondering where does the truth lie, in a sense. But all right, let's just keep going, man. This is always interesting to me. I just try to take it in with an open mind and just see where it goes.
Now, over the next 20 years, from 60 to 80, the rate of poverty among black families goes down an additional 18%, which is fine, but it's the continuation of a pre-existing trend at a slightly lower rate.
Interesting.
So it's not, and yet it's credited in the media and even in academia, it's credited usually to the civil rights laws and to the Johnson War on poverty. But of course, this was just a continuation of the previous trend. What really turned bad were the social degeneration that occurred over that period. I could go on for days about the social degeneration. But let me give you just one quick example. When I grew up in Harlem in the 40s and 50s, I never heard a gunshot. Now, I'm sure someone fired a gun somewhere in Harlem, but it was not such a pervasive thing that you had to hear it. I have relatives in Washington. I asked them the same question. People in my generation.
Growing up in Washington, D.C.
Yes, and low-income black neighborhoods. Did you ever hear a gunshot when you were growing up? And the answer was no. I have relatives in North Carolina. I asked the same question. No. And now, people in housing projects especially, they put kids, some of them, to bed in bathtubs so that they won't be hit by stray bullets in the night. That's the homicide rate in the years that I was growing up, and I was really quite lucky as I went through the research I discovered, being in the right place at the right time. The homicide victimization rate among black males in the decade of the 1940s declined by 18%. From 1950 to 1960, it declined another 22%. And then in the 1960s, when all these wonderful new ideas in the criminal justice system came in, all of that reversed, and it shot up 89% in one decade, wiping out all the progress of the two preceding decades.
That's an insane number. That's insane. We've kind of went to different places here because the title of this, We Have All Been Lied to About Lyndon Johnson. And I don't know how much, actually I should look that up. Because I know a bit about the welfare state, his expansion of the welfare state. How much involvement did Lyndon Johnson have in civil rights? Because that's what he's alluding to here. Okay, there we go. Lyndon B. Johnson played a huge role in civil rights, probably more than any other president since Abraham Lincoln, even though he was a Southern Democrat from Texas. See how they put Southern Democrat from Texas? Because this is interesting. And had previously opposed some civil rights measures as a senator. He became the president who pushed through some of the most historic civil rights laws in U.S. history. That is weird. That's weird that ChatGPT mentioned he was a Southern Democrat. And that's the one thing I didn't understand because I grew up and my parents vote Democrat, right? My dad's black, my mom's Latin Mexican. And they're super hardcore Christians, right? They have what the right is now, that's still their values, conservative Christian values, but they would always vote left. My dad votes left to this day. Sometimes I ask him because I'm confused. I am actually legitimately confused because the values I was raised with do not align with the party he votes for, And I get confused. I'm like, Dad, what, you've raised us like never do this, never do that. This is a sin. This is blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but the party you vote for really kind of advocates a lot of these things, And not that the other party is perfect. It's just interesting to me. But the way they put Southern Democrat, we knew back in that time what the Democrats were on, right? The Democrats were the party of the KKK, and I didn't know that until the last 5 or 6 years, which is wild to me. Because I grew up in a house that voted that way, and I never thought it's just interesting. But I thought this is a really interesting, I say interesting too much, even though he was a Southern Democrat. So Lyndon B. Johnson played a huge role in civil rights, probably more than any other president since Abraham Lincoln, even though he was a Southern Democrat from Texas and had previously opposed some civil rights measures as a senator. He became the president who pushed through some of the most historic civil rights laws in U.S. history. And I don't know why. There's something in that blurb. There's something speaking to me. It reminds me of Joe Biden, right? They're bigging him up. But we knew where Joe Biden came from and some of the things he passed that went totally against black culture. But then in 2020, all of a sudden, he's a changed man. And so I see some type of signal and pattern there. I could be tripping with Lyndon B. Johnson and Joe Biden. And it almost makes, I'm actually starting to freak out, starting to get goosebumps because I'm thinking, this concept of Manchurian candidate and how JFK gets assassinated. Then all of a sudden you're just telling me Lyndon B. Johnson jumps in there. He's a Southern Democrat, does not believe in civil rights, and then all of a sudden passes the most civil rights stuff since Abraham Lincoln. That's what they're telling me? Huh. Same with Joe Biden. So, like, if you really go down Joe Biden's history and some of his mentors, like, it's interesting because I get the hate for Donald Trump, and I don't advocate that. I'm not that guy, but I understand why people hate him. But this whole supremacist and all these Yahtzee, neo-Yahtzee narratives are kind of odd, because if you really do the history on Trump and how he kind of came up, he came up in black culture, in and out of black culture, rap culture, sports, da-da-da-da. Joe Biden didn't. His mentors were legit, like, you know, KKK dudes. And so it's interesting to see all of a sudden this come to Jesus moment by Joe Biden in 2020, and hey, you know, trans, black, rainbow, everyone come on down. The price is right. It just seems odd. I didn't know this about Lyndon Johnson. And so they're just, I don't know, there's a signal and pattern I'm seeing there. Maybe I'm tripping. I always be like, yo, I'm seeing through the matrix. And some people are just like, get in here in the comments and like, are just mad at me. Like, you ain't seeing you ain't awake. But I'm just like, am I tripping? It just seems like a something for Chat GPT to say that, even though he was a Southern Democrat and they put Southern Democrat in like dark black letters. You probably can't see that, but, you know, just for the record you know, someone could probably scroll in on that one of these days. Civil Rights Act of 1964 ended segregation, banned racial and gender discrimination in employment, establishment the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's Voting Rights Act of 1965, outlawed literacy tests. This is just interesting. And I'm not saying, I'm sure some of this stuff is great, but I'm sure there's some things sprinkled in that had a ripple effect into current day that could potentially, I don't know. I got to read. That thing goes on. And there's probably a lot I need to know, which is interesting that we don't learn this stuff in school. But me personally, I wish we would have had an economical class and learned more about taxes and stuff like that, because in the long line, like, I want to know my history, but America is a capitalist country and a country of abundance. So to get your bread and get right with the world would, to me, be like the best thing for all people. It serves you more. I don't worship money, but I just know it's a tool and it's like energy, and you need to know how to use that tool. And America has a lot of benefits. Anyways, I'm rambling. Let's go. We still got to hear him out.
And you could run through a great number of other things. Children raised without two parents present. That was about 22% in 1960.
Okay.
One generation later, it was 67%, and it's gone up a little since then as well. And now the rate among whites is higher than it was among blacks in 1960.
Right.
So if you look at what actually happens in the West.
So what he's explaining is like this whole welfare state concept that I was talking about earlier has crossed over to even white culture.
Make of these wonderful sounding policies, you see disaster after disaster.
All right. So, very important question.
From someone, isn't that wild? Because saying he's a Southern Democrat is basically saying he did in that time and era, he did not like black folks. Let's just keep it a buck. Lyndon Johnson. And so is it kind of weird that he penned to paper all these things that have been catastrophic for the black community and now other communities? It's just kind of wild.
Are the wonderful sounding policies simply irrelevant, beside the point, or do they actually play a role in these social pathologies?
It would be an incredible coincidence. But you see, and in fact, and I go into this in more detail in this second edition in the book. You see exactly the same pattern in Britain, and all the things that are, in fact, right down to riots in London, Manchester, and other cities, which read just like riots in Ferguson and Baltimore, and the things like race is not an issue because most of those people are white who are doing all of these things, right down to setting fire to police cars. So you see the same policies are brought in. And another thing that's very similar, and this gets into human capital again. People are saying, poor people can't rise in America anymore. And the data that they use leave out immigrants. Immigrants come here with little more than the clothes on their back. Go in here, and by the next generation, their kids are excelling in school, going off to leading colleges and into professions.
Colin Powell was, his parents were Jamaican, as I recall.
Yes.
And wasn't he raised in Harlem? He's about 2 generations.
I don't know if he was
it Harlem
raised there.
Or Brooklyn. New York,
I don't know
as
where he
recall.
was raised. I know he went to college at City College, which is on the edge of Harlem at that time. Is now in the middle of Harlem.
Got it.
Bro, that's crazy. You know, it's just funny. There's a book. I forget. It's like How to Lie with Numbers or How to Lie with Statistics. And it's just interesting how you can make statistics present what you want to present, right? And I think, for example, he talked about them leaving out immigrants and how much success they have in America, which you got to think, if you're an American citizen, you have a head start, right? You're a citizen. You don't have to get a green card, don't have to get a visa, don't have to, there's all these things. You speak the language. So you have a head start, and American citizens are remaining in poverty and remaining in poverty longer than an immigrant that might come here on a green card, on a visa, illegally, which creates all these different hoops they have to jump through, and they still typically, he's saying they have a very high success rate, which, I think all of us see that. We see the taco trucks. We see the, especially because I'm in Colorado. So you see a lot of these different things. I'm sure in the East Coast, you see like the Nigerians. You guys get the picture. And it's just, there's a lot going on in America. I watch these just to keep building and growing. I wouldn't say I necessarily have a stance yet, but there are little patterns and signals I'm starting to see. I do think, America would benefit if we incentivized better behaviors and, punished certain actions that don't get punished. But again, it's a lot deeper. It's just a lot like where I'm coming from is more of a surface level, and I'm starting to understand that as I watch more political commentary or see how deep, certain things go. But I don't think it's above me as long as I just keep doing my diligence. Eventually, there's going to be that sunshine moment, that light bulb moment. You're like, hey, some of these things can be fixed if we move in this direction. I've always been an optimistic person. I don't believe, in all the doom and gloom, even though it exists. But I try to keep my eye on the prize. So anyways, I actually enjoy talking about some of this stuff. Hopefully you guys do too. Please tap in the comments. Let me know where I was wrong. Let me know where you think I got it. And let's have some, middle ground conversation in the comments if we could, please. But if not, it's cool. Y'all could roast me. Y'all could talk. Y'all could, defame me. Like, whatever. It happens. It's crazy. The stalker's going to stalk. Anyways, appreciate you guys. I'll catch you on the next one.
City boy, city boy.